My name is Rose Magas, founder and CEO for Rover Digital Limited, and also the Chief Technology Officer for Commonwealth Business Women Network. I am privileged to be participating in the Target Gender Equality Live event. Rover Digital is a partner to Microsoft, AWS, Google, Zoho, and Radwin. We offer solutions focused on supporting organizations to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution, ranging from applications development, cloud hosting, artificial intelligence, process automation, and connectivity. I want to believe that at the core, I'm a gender activist, but more recently a self-declared digital inclusion activist. As an organization, we became signatories to the UN Global Compact and the Women Empowerment Principles, not because it's a good thing to do, but an essential component of supporting our quest to see the Sustainable Development Goals achieved sooner. Out of the frustration of seeing less and less women at the top, we launched a program dubbed TGE, which stands for Digital Girls in Artificial Intelligence. The TGE program targets young, vibrant girls or young women aged between 18 and 25 years who are passionate about digital space, and in particular, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and want an opportunity to express themselves. The young women join the organization as employees, but are put into a 5-year mentorship program to accelerate them into leaders in the AI space. I strongly believe that SMEs, by sheer numbers, have the ability to turbocharge the gender equality drive. Women and girls continue to bear the brunt of global crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic set us back more than 30 years of progress we had made within the workforce. The crisis in Russia and Ukraine conflict, sadly, is clawing back even more for the women and children of both countries. I don't believe there's a better time than now for everyone to support women and girls in STEM. The pandemic exposed us to the gap between the haves and have-nots in the digital economy. We saw growth in businesses that were centered around STEM, whether it's in the production of vaccine or remote working solutions. The power to transform economies, countries, and communities lies in breaking the gender bias. It lies in taking stock of our privileges and answering the question, who is not at the table? Why are they not at the table? Then going further and answering the question, what is my role in making the table more inclusive? The power really lies in having women and girls in STEM. We all can do something. As an SME, you have a great opportunity to shape the landscape by embedding the women empowerment principles at the core of your organization. Join me and others by visiting www.weps.org. That is www.weps.org, and taking action today.
Well, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this regional spotlight on Africa of the Target Gender Equality Live event. Thank you for being with us. We are very happy to have this session today, and we would like to take an opportunity to discuss the findings of the recently published gender gap analysis tool of the Women Empowerment Principles that was launched last week, and particularly discuss the findings for the Africa region. And for that, we are very happy to have with us Miss Halila Mbowe, who is the founder of the company Unleashed Social Ventures in Tanzania. We are very happy to have you here, Ms. Mbowe. Ms. Mbowe is a social entrepreneur, a youth activist, and so many other things, an entrepreneur herself. So we are delighted to have you with us here. Welcome today.
Thank you so much, Marie, Elena. It's a pleasure being here. Speaking to you from a very warm Tanzania. So I feel that the conversation we're going to have today, I do know we're going to touch on climate change a little bit, I'm actually feeling the effects directly. So I'm grateful to her.
Excellent. So perhaps Ms. Mbowe, it could be interesting to hear from you, just to start, what Unleashed Africa Social Ventures does and why you decided to go ahead and found the company. I think our audience would really like to know more about that.
That's a great question. I love talking about this. So Unleashed Africa Social Ventures is actually a group of social enterprises. I am very passionate about the potential that social enterprises has to actually transform Africa and take us forward into our renaissance. So Unleashed Africa Social Ventures works at the intersection of youth development, social innovation, and job creation. But we do that across a few different brands. We look at one of our areas is the creative economy. So we have Unleashed Academy for Creative Arts and Leadership. And what we do there is we tackle issues to do with how do we build value within the creative economy. So that's what we do at Unleashed Academy. And so we have different capacity building programs for creatives. We're working on different research within the creative economy, looking at the fact that it's really a space that with very limited data. We do a lot of, we're doing a lot of mindset work, mindset change work. I'd love to share more about that. But then another brand that we have is the Beautiful You Initiative. And over there, it's more of tech for gender. So the big question that was on my mind before we launched Beautiful You Initiative was, why are there so many programs and so many projects for young girls, for girl-child empowerment? Why do we have so many campaigns around sexual reproductive health education? Why do we have so many programs going on, and yet the numbers are shocking? And the numbers I was looking at was teenage pregnancy prevalence, HIV/AIDS prevalence. Why are the numbers still dire?
And we also understand that you are an advocate for gender equality within your company itself. And I think most of our audience would like to hear as well about that journey. For those of us who know the web, it's clear that it's an interesting tool in terms of having a roadmap for companies to advance on gender equality. And the results of the web's gender analysis tool in Africa are already very interesting. I mean, the tool, for those who don't know, it's a self-assessment that companies can take on their own, online, anonymously, and it helps them identify where they are in their gender journey and what are the areas where they can do more and which actions they could take on. So, so far, the GAPS tool has been used by more than 2,600 companies around the world. And for the first time, we have some data coming out of what's happening in those companies. And we see that in the case of Africa, the focus is very much on women entrepreneurs. Supporting women entrepreneurship is one of the areas in which companies tend to work more in terms of outreach, but also procurement, supporting women-led businesses in training, access to finance. What can you tell us about that, Ms. Mbowe? I mean, we know that the COVID crisis hit women-led businesses more than other businesses, maybe because of the type of sectors where they were, but also because at some point they were already in a dear situation when it comes to access to finance. But now we also know that they play a critical role in coming out of that crisis and also in other crises like the climate emergency. What do you think the private sector and companies can do to really leverage and support women-led businesses, for example, in the area of access to supply chains and procurement? What could you tell us from in your experience about that?
So that's a big question. And what I'm going to do, perhaps I'll break it down so, so that I can answer it better. So, okay, so with regard to companies taking the WEPS tool, one of the first things I would like to say, and you brought up my being an advocate for women equality, for gender equality within the workspace. One of the things I'd like to mention is there's a time within my company I realized that I was literally only hiring women. We've got to a space that we had 85% females within the company. And one of the things that, even as we pivoted to bring in more gender equality, that's more men within the team, one of the things that was very important for me as a leader was making sure that we still maintained a safe space. What do I mean by safe space? A safe space for expression, a safe space for healing, a safe space to engage, a safe space to connect. Why? Because one of the things that a lot of companies do well is we tick boxes. So we can say that, yes, we are gender, something that they have gone through. Do they feel safe to ask questions? Do they feel, can you still hear me?
Yes, I think we lost you after tick boxes. So perhaps if you can.
All right. Yeah. So what I was saying, yes, I was saying we're great at ticking boxes, right? But one of the things that I love to ask, just alongside data such as the incredible data we have from the web tool analysis is, are you truly creating a space that is safe? Are you creating a space that is safe for women to connect? Are you creating a space for women to heal? Are you creating a space that understands the unique challenges that women in business, women in corporate go through? Are you creating a safe space that can actually help you challenge your mental models about gender equality? And most of the times, those are conversations that trigger reflections that a lot of us don't go through. Because then when it's just a tick in the box, so yes, we have women in the workspace, but are there women really flourishing to the best of their ability? Or are they just becoming a clone of the system that was there before them? And of course, we have systems in the workplaces that, it was very patriarchal. So then we have women who are comparing themselves to the opposite gender and trying to, fit within a mold. And what happens is we lose the unique qualities that these incredible people would have brought to the table, because our spaces are not necessarily creating that atmosphere where we can consistently challenge our mental models. So that's something I wanted to say about the WEF tool. I think it's incredible, and perhaps we'll talk about it in a later question, but I just wanted to bring in that aspect of the safe spaces. And with regard to women entrepreneurship, so yes, there's a lot more focus on women entrepreneurship right now, especially because, all data points to the fact that, economic empowerment, financial access to finance is something that is critical when you think about gender equality. For the longest time, it was more of, we have to empower you, but now it's, how do we give you, do I give you a fishing rod, or do I give you a fish? So how do we equip you with the tools to allow yourself to build yourself up and build up your community and bring your family along, because that's what women do. One of the things I'd like to talk about these programs, however, is the fact that even though we have very many programs, and this is something that we also do at Unleashed Africa, we have accelerator programs and capacity building programs for women, is many of the programs that we have are copy-paste versions of previously existing programs that worked without necessarily looking at the unique or the contextual needs of women. What do I mean when I say that? You have a lot of programs that, again, are are great. You come through a training, you go through a mentorship and so on and so forth. But most of the programs that we realize, even when we were running our own, you find that in the beginning of a program, you have, you're at 50-50 or 70-40 because you've ticked a box, 70-30, you've ticked a box. But as the program goes further, you find that women are falling on the side. And this also happens, of course, when you talk about data that looks at climbing the corporate ladder. It's the same way in entrepreneurship. Women fall on the wayside. And the question that I always ask when we're creating these programs is, did you necessarily look at the reasons why she would not be able to attend? Because at the end of the day, there's some factors that she cannot run away from. Her being a woman in the societies that we live in, there's some things and some factors that are either she has learned while growing up, some background issues, family issues, societal issues, economic issues that you need to look into as we're creating this program. So it's not just about you showing up and learning how to create a business plan. It's about showing up and us training you on how to realize that you're capable of actually executing and creating a unique business plan. And what are we doing there? What we're doing is we are reforming mental models that have been in existence for so long. A lot of women who go through these programs come in with a mindset that yes, I'm coming, but I'm ticking a box, picking up so many certificates. But what we're finding is the information that they're receiving in these conference rooms, in these training spaces, they're not transferring to businesses on ground. And when we look and when we follow that entire chain, one of the things that we realize is we have so many numbers and so many programs that we can easily say, oh, we trained 100,000 women. But then how many of those women were actually able to translate and transfer whatever was learned in these spaces into actual businesses? Very few. And that's data that we don't necessarily look at. And for companies and organizations such as my own or development partners who are creating these programs, one of the most critical things is to create to think about systems change when we're creating these programs, to look at human-centered design when we're creating these programs, and really create programs that can truly touch on the intrinsic needs of the women as we're training them. They have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, what we're doing is we are literally circling around the same issue and regurgitating the same issue. And what we're doing is creating problems within problems as we're ticking boxes. With regards to the procurement practices, one of the things that I'd love to mention, Elena, my personal experience, right? When I was, and I think these things, even without me sharing data and stats, my personal experience with procurement was one example. Working within the development space, I got a bid, I won a tender, but I didn't get that tender because I refused to sleep with somebody. This was an international NGO. And another example is I didn't get the tender because I refused to pay a bribe. But then the biggest thing that I was told by the procurement manager at the time is, you don't baby yourself enough. And I was so puzzled. Like, what do you mean I don't baby myself? It's like, when you come into this place, you have to darling and you have to dress a certain way, especially because the people in this space, that's what they're looking for. And so my question was, does everybody who gets business with you do that? And he said, you'd be surprised what people do behind the curtain. And so what he opened my eyes to was, there's a lot of us who speak gender equality, who come onto the spaces, but we don't necessarily live it. And the issue with that is when young girls now come into this space without examples, like real authentic examples of what we did to get over or to say no, they come into these spaces and they think it's normal. And I'm like, it's not normal. It's not normal. I'm going to say no, but then I'm going to say no and also have to share my journey and share the examples of what happened to me so that somebody else could know that, oh, I have the option to say no. And with procurement practices, one of the most important things to think about, we talk about having a lot of equality within this space as well. But the person, for example, for me with that international NGO, there were two people in that department. There was a female and a male, and the female was open to me actually giving off my body, and she was actually puzzled that I refused to do it. And she calls me and asked me, "Why didn't you do it? You're going to lose this tender." And I told her I would not defame myself for anything, and of course I lost it. So it's not necessarily about making sure we have females in the spaces. It's making sure that across the board. So yes, that's important. Tick the box. We must have women across the board, but we must make sure that across the board, people are questioning their own practices, mental models, and we have programs built in within our companies that are not an option, that are mandatory, where we can get to sit down, share experiences, challenge one another, have brave conversations, and really be able to trigger change. Because otherwise, then things remain the same way. And I have to mention that this NGO that I'm talking about was actually an NGO that was championing gender equality.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that personal testimony. It gives us an idea of how difficult it is. I mean, we can talk about affirmative procurement, but then the conversation is about sexual harassment, how women still have this type of barriers and problems that obviously these questions are not asked to men when they apply for this, otherwise seen as very formal and objective processes. Thank you so much for sharing that and for reminding us that the journey for women-led businesses, it's incredibly difficult when it comes to these things. But thank you, that's really, really appreciated. Now, we know that when we talk to a lot of companies using the webs, taking the tool, they say it might be overwhelming. There is so much to do. Where do we start? So what could be your answer to someone trying to start that journey? What would be, in your opinion, some of the quick wins, but also going beyond ticking the boxes, as you say? What could be some of the first step that a company willing to take this journey could take?
That's a really good question. So, I mean, what I'd say is every big and meaningful goal must be broken down into sizable and actionable chunks for it to have meaningful and sustainable change. So when we talk about gender equality, it's become this mammoth of a conversation, this mammoth of a responsibility. It feels like a weight on so many people's shoulders. And to others, it feels like, oh, it's gender equality. It's just making sure it's just that word that we throw around. It's just a jargon that we throw around here and there. But change, when it comes to gender equality, it's a lot more. It's like you said, it's a lot more than ticking the boxes, and it's a lot more about mindset change, changing mental models for both men and women. And of course, the first actions I would recommend, even as somebody is looking at the principles, the women empowerment principles, is, you know, before even jumping into those, it has to start from here. So even with leadership teams, it's, you know, how do you prepare yourself? You have to prepare yourself to build a safe space for engagement for yourself and for other people. You have to create opportunities for self-reflection at all levels of the company. Now, you know, creating opportunities for self-reflection, it might sound like, oh, okay, so I'm just going to come sit down and think about it. No, sometimes it goes into bringing a coach. You know, bring in a counselor, bring in a consultant who can really show you, aside from just forms that are filled, really allow you to have these conversations at a deep level. Be ready to engage in brave conversations, because sometimes these brave conversations, and most of the time what they should do is they should not only question your mental models about, you know, gender equality in the workspace, but also your mental models about gender equality in society, in your home, in your home with your children, how you're bringing up the next generation, because that's what they do. And then you must be ready to flip the switch. Like there's going to be an intentional drive in every single person involved to flip that switch and think about it not just as a tick in the box, but get on the bandwagon to taking humanity further than it's ever been. Because I feel that when it comes to gender equality, it's not about, oh, we're empowering women and we're giving women the opportunity and we're building a future for women. No, we're building a future for humanity. And if any single person realizes, for me, it's about purpose, realizes that we all collectively have the mandate and have to take action to bring humanity forward, one of the things that we'll realize is we have responsibility. So even when you're looking at the 7 principles, it's not about ticking everything at the same time, because they're massive. When you look at them, even when they're broken down, it might feel intimidating. But where can you start? The thing that for me, it's where can you start? Where's your starting point? Just start. And do not, for any company that's wishing to jump onto these principles, it's not about, oh, we have to tick all these boxes at the same time. It's really about where can we start that will be catalytic to our entire system, to our entire process. So think about it in that way. What starting point would be the catalyst for not only this mindset change and a mental model shift within the organization, but will be the catalyst to move all the other dominoes, what have you. And this could look very different with different companies. But then at the end of the day, it really starts with making sure that everybody as a whole takes on this challenge. It has to be a conversation had across all levels of an organization. Because if it's just a leader and a leader leaves, one particular leader leaves, what happens to the organizations? It has to be a conversation that brings in the entire organization as a whole, which might look different for different companies.
Exactly. So I think each company needs to own their own webs, their own version of the webs.
Absolutely.
And where to start, but this suggestion of creating the space for that self-reflection and having those brave conversations, I think it's an excellent advice. And I think with that, I would like to thank you. I hope this conversation itself will inspire others to follow the journey. Definitely, it has been insightful, and thank you so much for sharing your experience in different areas. We are very happy to have had this talk with you, and hopefully this will lead to others being inspired to continue this journey. Thank you very much, Ms. Mbowe. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marilena. Actually, I wanted to say one last thing before I go.
Okay.
And I think this would be my call to different organizations, and especially youth-led businesses, what have you. So just to round off, I'd love to kind of just share a challenge with to development partners, different organizations, youth-led businesses, different leaders, what have you, is allow yourself to think past the norm. Allow yourself to think about intersections of things. For instance, if you're working within tech, I understand you're working within tech, but one of the things that you can think about is how can tech and creativity or the creative economy merge to create, for instance, a social behavioral change communications campaign that could inspire people to take on climate change and take ownership of the process. There are ways we have been doing things, especially when it comes to climate change, that I believe are outdated. As the world progresses, especially even with gender equality, we have been doing, and sometimes I look at our programs and the things that we're doing and I'm thinking same old, right? But the issues are still there. And for us to tackle those issues, we must have aggressive action. And we must allow ourselves to think, not even think outside the box, it's destroy the damn box, destroy the box, and allow ourselves to work and question our own understanding of reality and think past it. For instance, with Unleashed Africa, we're working within the creative space. It's always thinking about, okay, what are we not looking at? What does the data say? I'm not going to pat myself on the back for a 0.005%, change on behavior. I'm like, okay, no, come on. The world is rapidly changing. Issues are rapidly advancing. And we need to rapidly advance in our ways, in our innovation methods, in our partnering towards those innovations, and in allowing ourselves to really break the barriers of our own thought processes and be able to intersect across sectors. And that's something that's a challenge that I'd love to put out there. How can different sectors collaborate, coordinate to really tackle some of the biggest issues that we face? And then we have to stop taking so much time to make up decisions when it comes to collaborations. The same thing we tell entrepreneurs: test, fail fast, pivot. That's the same thing I'd say when it comes to development conversations. Test, fail fast, pivot. we must take bold and aggressive action to tackle these issues. Otherwise, we're going to be here having such conversations in the next 10 years, and, what are we going to tell the next generations? What did we do? Right. And so the same way our previous generations fought for us to have this world right now, of course, we have chaos, but there's so many things that we can still be grateful for. So let's leave legacies that we can look, future generations can look back at and say they truly made something incredible. They truly did something incredible. They truly allowed themselves to change and be brave and create a world that works for all. Otherwise, it's just talk. So let's push for action.
Thank you so much. I love the call for action, and thank you very much for a very inspiring conversation. Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day too. Bye-bye.
Transformation is hard work. If you're going to change the way people have been thinking and have been doing things, it is hard work. And it is hard work both at a serious level and at relatively minor levels. If you are going to say that I'm going to find women to promote, you must be conscious to make sure that the short list, when positions are filled, gives women a fighting chance. No use having a short list of 6 people, 5 men, 1 woman, and say that you're going to find a woman. So it's in being conscientious, it's in being prepared to do the hard slog to transform that would then get us where we need to get to. And when we appoint, let's appoint properly. Let's appoint properly qualified, properly competent individuals, because the representative role remains significant. When a person fails, when a woman fails, it's all women who have failed. I suppose in South Africa, you'll say when a Black person has failed, it's all Black people, but it's getting better for men. It still remains skewed against women. So indeed, let those enablers go beyond being words on a paper. They go beyond being statutes, laws and statute books. They go beyond being policy and policy documents, but let's implement them and implement them properly. And even in a transformed environment, some of these things do not come naturally. So it's about continuously challenging ourselves and continuously being conscious that we need to enable, that certain people had doors closed for them. It's in small things like levels of confidence, where you need to make sure that people feel comfortable, they feel confident to speak, they know that they will be supported when they make their points, or they'll be corrected, but corrected in a building manner, in a constructive manner that would help them, take the next step.